We hear it everywhere in our culture, especially among minorities, right? The greatest street commandment, thou shalt not snitch. And many have lost their lives behind this law, right? The guilty as well as the innocent. But I'm afraid that most of us don't fully understand what we're trying to communicate. Definitions are necessary, and without them, you wind up in a world that looks much like ours today. Defining snitching. First, I'd like to give reasons why historical snitching was and is horrible today, right? There was a thing called slave codes established in the 1660s. And slave codes was designed to control and criminalize black behavior in various ways. These slave codes affected not only slaves, but also the legal status of free blacks. The slave code relied much more heavily on capital punishment than did the criminal code that was binding on the white citizenry. Virginia enacted over 130 slave codes between 1689 and 1865. So we know that the justice system of our day is still very much corrupt, and we seek to hold it accountable to the law of God, which it was supposedly founded upon, right? But there's a piece of an article that I want you guys to check out. It's entitled Anatomy of a Snitch, the Underground Manifesto. I'll put the link in the description. Quote, on the slave plantation, the slaves was recognized in 3 different categories: the house slave, the field slave, and the seldom talked about yard slave. There was a distinction between the field slave and the house slave, but the yard slave was much more difficult to figure out because of their many levels of transparency and feigned loyalty. To gain favor with the slave master, they would often snitch on the field slave about plans to run away, plans of rebellion, etc. Likewise, the yard slave would also provide information about the slave master to the field slave, to give the field slave the impression that he or she was really with them. And of course, the yard slave tips were anonymous to both parties. The yard slave would also receive frivolous trinkets for snitching: a piece of chicken, maybe a butter biscuit, right? The yard slave was given such a title because he or she functioned between the field slave and the slave master. He or she is aptly known today as the opportunist snitch. The time have changed, but the characteristics and motives are the same. The opportunist snitch is essentially a two-faced coward, unquote. Now, if someone fits that description today, and they do, right, we should shun that kind of individual, right? Why? Because that person is still a wicked, manipulous, two-faced coward. Today, we still have informants, those that's in the life of crime, benefiting from the drugs, money, and the sex it brings, while at the same time reporting to authorities about the scandals being practiced in such a world. Right? There are people today that just love gossip, meddling, right? They thrive on, and you gotta look this word up, schadenfreude, which means one who loves to see others suffer. Proverbs 21 and 23. One who guards his mouth and his tongue guards his soul from trouble. We know that there are demonic people on the task force, and they're policing several communities around the country. And I don't believe it's wise to call the police on every little misdemeanor and infraction, right? But if you are a criminal, remember, don't be shocked when the police are called upon you, right? You shouldn't expect the stand-up citizens in society to live by the same street code as you do. That'd be foolish. At the same time, quote, one who goes about as a slanderer reveals secrets, but one who is trustworthy conceals a matter. Proverbs 11:13, Proverbs 26 and 17. Like one who takes a dog by the ears, so is one that passes by and meddles with strife not belonging to him, unquote. Simply, there are things that's just not your business. So there are instances in which we should just mind our own business, right? Use discernment. Now, when it comes to Christians, dealing with other Christians, right, we should keep it in-house for the most part, if not in all cases, right? Quote, does any of you, when he has a case against his neighbor, dare go to the law before the unrighteous and not before the saints? Or do you not know that the saints will judge the world? If we would judge the world, or if the world is judged by you, are you not competent to form the smallest law courts? Do you not know that we will judge angels? How much more matters of this life? So if you have a law court dealing with this matter of life, do you appoint them as judges who are of no accounts in the church? I say this to your saint. Is it not so that there is not among you anyone wise who will be able to decide between his brother and his sister? But brother goes to law with brother, and that before unbelievers. 1 Corinthians 6, 1-6. Now, back to the street. If you're involved with the street in any kind of way, and you tell on a friend, a crime associate, or whoever, right, then you're just like one of those opportunist snitch mentioned earlier, right? You're not trying to do the right thing because you found God, anything like that. You're just a disloyal, foul fraud. That's what you are, right? However, Christian or not, let's get into this. When you see senseless murder, especially of the innocent, right, and they had nothing to do with nothing, right? Are we supposed to help with that kind of justice? If we're involved, if we see it, of course, right? You sin against God if you don't. Well, let me tell you this. It's better, honestly, to be killed by a sinner than to live against God. I don't go by the street code anymore. I go by God's law. However, I keep my nose clean, none of my business. But a senseless act of murder to the innocent, right? That's foul. God frowns upon it. Leviticus 5:1. Now, if a person sins after he hears a public adoration to testify, when he is a witness, right, whether he has seen or otherwise known, if he does not tell it, then he will bear his guilt. Simply said, if you know you've seen something that was unjust, let's say the unjust rape of a woman, the unjust murder of the innocent child or a regular civilian, stand up, you know what I'm saying, nice kid, law-abiding citizen, whoever it is, then it's foul if you don't get involved. You taking up for cowards that would do such an act in your community. And this is why our communities are the way that they are, because, oh, we ain't supposed to tell them. No, you ain't supposed to tell. Mind your business when it comes to criminal activities. Keep your nose out of their business. That's a whole nother world, right? You're not supposed to snitch when it comes to that. That's not even your business. However, when it involves you, when someone is taken about this world because of a senseless act that didn't involve anybody that was gunned down or raped or molested, it's your business. Why? God's gonna hold you accountable. He's gonna hold you accountable. And the thing that should have been done to that person that did the injustice should be done to you, or will be done to you in some cases. So, I mean, riddle me this. We know the opportunist snitch. He's snitching on the one that's trying to be free, right? Especially back in the day with slavery. What person is trying to be free now? I'm talking about when you have murderers and thieves. Are they oppressed, rapists, and child molesters, right? Are they trying to seek liberty? Let me tell you the answer to that. No, absolutely not. So if we want to see change, then of course we need to kill the division within ourselves, right? And just live out the laws of God the way He laid it out for us, right? That's only if we love our children, mothers, fathers, siblings, the whole family, friends, etc. Look, Luke 10:27. And he answered, you shall love the Lord God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. You have to love your neighbor. You know, when you see the injustice that's happening, I'm talking, again, let me specify. Senseless act of murder when it's involving people that are civilians, that's not even in that world, right? Or people that are being women that are being raped, children that are being molested. We as believers, we hold to a whole nother code, and we should deal with those matters accordingly. And the scriptures lays it out for us. Look at Psalms 94:16. Who will stand up for me against evildoers? Who will take his stand for me against those who do injustice? Unquote. Look at Ezekiel 3:18-19. When I say to the wicked, you will certainly die, right? And you do not warn them or warn him or speak out to warn the wicked from his wicked way so that he may turn and live or so he may live, that wicked person shall die for wrongdoing, but his soul or his blood I will require from your hand. However, if you have warned the wicked and he does not turn from his wickedness or from his wicked way, then he shall die for his wrongdoing. But you have saved yourself. The blood ain't on your hands. That's unquote. Blood is not on your hands. Why? At least you warn the people. This is warning always before destruction. Isaiah 5:20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who substitute darkness for light and light for darkness, who substitutes bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. We hear it everywhere in our culture, especially among minorities, right? The greatest street commandment, thou shalt not snitch. And many have lost their lives behind this law, right? The guilty as well as the innocent. But I'm afraid that most of us don't fully understand what we're trying to communicate. Definitions are necessary, and without them, you wind up in a world that looks much like ours today. There is warnings all throughout scriptures, how we should conduct ourselves, right? Let me tell you something. When I was in the street, I kept my mouth shut. Why? Because I was doing the very foul thing. So if I got caught, I took the charges. If you running around with somebody and you know there's dope, there's pistols in the car, and if we got pulled over, then guess what? We was all going to jail. Or I was going to jail. Whose dope is that? I'm not saying nothing. Whose gun is that? I'm not saying nothing, but I'm definitely not saying it's his, or it's theirs. Why? I'm with them. That's the life I chose. It was foolish, but guess what? That's the code you live by. That's the life and you keep that amongst yourselves as criminals. However, hear me out clear, because many people will watch this, oh, he a snitch. If I see a senseless murder of an innocent child or a woman being raped, if I don't get my hands on them first, I will be the one that will stand up for justice in that case, because these are the laws of God. I live by the God code. And so if you a criminal, free game. Do what you do. I just want you to repent and believe the gospel. Your business is not my business. I'm not telling on nothing. I don't see anything. But when you involve civilians and terrorizing the communities, neighborhood-wide, city-wide, statewide, nationwide, these things will never change. You got artists trying to tell you that you can't say anything, living by a code that half of them don't even live by anyhow. Whoever said that's snitching, justice is snitching? Not in God's eyes. In God's eyes, justice is being obedient. We want justice, right? Because if somebody did it to your family member, you would want some kind of justice, whether you want to get them yourself or where you want the authorities to take care of them. You know that person deserves justice. Now, on that day, you will stand before the believers, all of y'all, whoever you are, if you don't repent, and we will judge. Let me tell you who the biggest snitch is, the enemy. And let me tell you who your father is and who you serving, the enemy. So you got the enemy that's snitching to God on you 24/7. It's trying to put you not in jail, trying to put you in hell, right? And you falling into the traps. And you got people scared to tell the police if you take the life of somebody innocent, you terrorize the neighborhood, you a coward. You know what I'm saying? Like those individuals should be dealt with. Those individuals, capital punishment for the rapists, capital punishment for the murderers, excuse me. When you inflict that upon the innocent, God said he hates those who shed innocent blood, right? So anyhow, thanks for watching. Let me know, how you feel about it in the comments. And there's plenty of scriptures, plenty more to get into. But I'm just going to leave it at that. God bless. No other gospel. Yeah.